Well, it's with pleasure for me today to introduce today's guest speaker, Tom Stehlik, or should I say Dr. Tom Stehlik, but we won't be I don't think he'll be talking about his academic career or life today. When Paul Kelly, whom I think we all know, was in town recently as the guest of honor in relation to the renaming of a city laneway in his honor, Paul's only invited guest, apart from family, was Tom Stehlik. So it's a real testament of one artist to another fellow artist, and the high regard that is held of Tom. And live music is, by definition, quite ephemeral. A very different experience to listening to Spotify or to music in one's own living room. And as a drummer, Tom is the person at the back of the group who holds the band together. And drummers often kind of fly under the radar. They're not out there with a lead guitar or with a voice. And but he's really, in some ways, the most important person. And Tom has captured the times and mood of the live music scene in his, and it's actually one and only book called Count Me In. And he's very generously decided to give $5 to every book that he sells today to our club. So I do hope that you'll support it. It is a labor of love. There is no money in it for him at all. I shall let Tom tell his story. So please make some noise for Tom Stehlik.
Thank you very much, Zing, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the lovely meal and the view. What a view! Now, I'm just recovering from a bout of bronchitis, so I hope my voice holds up and it's not too croaky. But as Zing says, I've actually written quite a few academic books as well, but this is my first memoir, and it's about my life as a drummer. And I started playing drums in 1969 when I was 14, and I've never stopped. And I'm still playing this right now and still enjoying it. And that's not to say I haven't done other things in my life. I've had an academic career. I've had a family. I have 3 beautiful grown-up daughters. But quite often my daughters will be talking about something and I'll go, where was I? What was that? And they'll go, you were at a band practice. So I was often away on tour with a band, playing somewhere, missing the family events. But one of the reasons for writing the book was for my message to my daughters to say this is what I was up to all those years. Another reason, as Zing said, is as a drummer you have a unique view from the back of the band. And I'm here to sort of celebrate drummers. And as Ringo recently said, I love playing the drums, and I still do. So there we go. When I was 15, I joined my first band, and it was called Raven. And we were sort of like 15, 16, and we were just playing music that we heard on the radio, the Beatles, the Stones, Creedence Clearwater, that sort of thing. And this was great for me because I realised that as a drummer, you're not out the front, you're actually holding the band together and you're the foundation of the beat. And I realised this quite early on, playing in this band. When people are dancing, as a drummer, if you speed up, the dancers speed up. If you slow down, the dancers slow down. And so drummers have control over the tempo of the room. And that's a great revelation that I've discovered even at this age. The other great thing about this band was just discovering how much fun it is making music with a bunch of people. It's just like a gang. You have the camaraderie and you put together more than the sum of its parts is what a band is. You all put together your individual effort and it creates something musically that's quite magical. So that was the first band, but I have to tell one story about this band. Our most exciting gig was in 1971, and we were supporting an Adelaide band called Fraternity. I don't know if anyone remembers this band, but you might remember the singer on the left. Bon Scott, who went on to sing in very famous AC/DC. But he was in this Adelaide band, Fraternity. My little band, Raven, was supporting them at the Red Legs Club Room. And Fraternity were famous in Adelaide at the time for having the biggest PA system in Adelaide. They had, huge speakers and microphones everywhere, and they'd had this big thing set up. And my little band came on, and we wheeled on our two little amplifiers and played our little set of Beatles songs. And then afterwards, when we were packing up, Bon Scott came up to me and said, "Hey man, you guys could have used our PA." I don't think we would have known what to do with it, but that was a moment for me. And then in 1970-71, my big brother Ian, who was at uni with Xing Tan, went to America on an exchange for a year. And when he came back, he brought with him an electric guitar and all sorts of ideas about the latest progressive music that was happening. So we formed a little band. I called it Perelandra because I was influenced by C.S. Lewis, and those in the early 70s we were all into science fiction. And this band was writing its own music, and we were influenced by bands of the day like Pink Floyd and Yes and King Crimson. And here's a picture from us playing up at Kersbrook at a communal property, a sort of a hippie fest. And Xing Tan might have even been there. You probably remember the combi band. You don't remember, that's right. And I didn't remember this either until last year when I was putting the book together, and my brother sent me this photo, and I go, wow. These visual memories are fantastic. It helped me in writing the book. So that was Perelandra. Then I went to Flinders Uni. I met a guy called Paul Kelly, and we had a band, and he used to sort of hang around on the edges of this band and just sort of playing bongos basically. And then he picked up the guitar and suddenly started writing songs. And this picture was taken at a house on Cross Road where he was living at the time, and I believe Xing Tan, you were also living there at the time. And this is how the connection was made with Paul. The house is no longer there. It's a Woolworths car park now. But Paul went on to do really big things, and as we all know, he now is a very famous musician, but he hasn't changed a bit. He's still the modest guy that we knew back then. So this is another band my brother and I had. It was called the Lone Rangers. We got into country music, so we're now talking 1975, and this is taken on the plaza at Flinders University where I was still a student. And Paul was very keen to start a band, so he sort of enrolled me and a couple of other guys from this band, the Lone Rangers, and put together his first band in Adelaide, which he wanted to call it the Debutantes. And we said, oh, that's kind of that's a bit of a fluffy name. We're cool musos. But he felt himself he was a debutante to the musical world. So it was either known as the Debutantes or the Paul Kelly Band. But that was before he went to Melbourne, and the rest is history. He's made a huge career. And of course now, this is Paul recently headlining the Womadelaide Festival in March this year as a performer, still writing wonderful songs. But back in the day, this is me and Paul on the beach when we both still had lots of hair. Talking about hair, the next band I was in was really hairy. This is called the Bank of France, for some unknown reason. Greg Champion, the guitarist on the left, that's what he wanted to call it. It was his band, he wrote the songs. And this picture was taken at the old Tivoli Hotel on Perry Street. I don't know if you remember the Tivoli Hotel. It was a great venue. It's no longer even a pub. But we used to play there a lot. All the bands coming from interstate would play there. The Angels, Richard Clapton, those sort of bands would play there. And it was famous for having the scungiest band room. This is a sort of, taken in the band room out the back, which was so filthy that the floor was covered in rubbish, and the rubbish bin was actually in the middle of the room to catch the water because there was a hole in the roof. But those were the days, and we used to have fun. But some of you might know Greg Champion, the guy on the left. He's also moved to Melbourne, became a very successful musician, writing songs about football and cricket. And he recently did a whole lot of gigs over the grand final weekend, singing his comical footy and cricket songs. So he's a guy who's also done well out of music and managed to make a musical career, unlike myself, I've had to have a sort of a real job as well as playing drums all this time. So this is a photo of me taken in that band, and we've used it for the cover photo of the book. And all I can say really is that I used to play with my eyes shut and my mouth open for some reason. Maybe I was concentrating on the music. This is 1978. Nowadays I keep my mouth shut and my eyes open because I like to see what's going on. But I still have that drum kit. And so 45 years later, this is now a vintage drum kit. And vintage drum kits are like vintage cars, vintage guitars. They're highly collectible, so it pays to hang on to things. I have to say the only time I was paid to play music as a full-time musician was when I joined Redgum. I was asked to join Redgum. So I played drums with them for 6 months in 1981. They'd just turned professional and chucked in their jobs, and they were about to tour around Australia, so they added a drummer and a bass player. And we travelled all over from Tasmania to Queensland and points in between. It was I knew John Sherman because he was at Flinders University as well, so the connection was there. And that was really interesting because Redgum was a band who could play in inner city nightclubs or out in the bush, and still the audiences would still connect with them. So they had a very broad reach. And the thing is, this is my introduction to the music industry business, because by then Redgum was a business, and after 6 months they decided they wanted another drummer. So they just sort of said, in the middle of a tour, in between, we were just about to go and record their third album, they said, we're going to get another drummer. So they left me in Melbourne on the side of the road, literally with my drum kit, and 2 weeks' pay, and said, see you later. And so, that's kind of how the music industry works sometimes. You can be very expendable, especially drummers. But that was a good experience at the time. But even before I was asked to join Redgum, I was playing in a very quirky band in Adelaide called Systems Go. And this was led by a guy called Arnold Strauss. Now, Arnold's got a story which I'll tell you in a minute. But in the 80s, we were really sort of investigating new sorts of music and being as quirky as we could be, and also including women in the band because, rock music's very blokey. So one of the women was Lorraine Furler, who was an artist and she was playing bass. She had a daughter called Sia, who was about 5 at the time. We used to hang around when we were at band practice, and obviously ingested something because she's grown up to be a world-famous, very important personality, musician, Sia. That was her mum in that band, Systems Go. Arnold, the guy with the patch, was famous for another reason. And when I came back from touring with Redgum, he'd started another band called Speedboat, and this was really very avant-garde, and we were very funky and loud and brassy. And Arnold was just writing songs all the time because that's what he was. He was a songwriter, and he was also very influenced by Brian Ferry and was concerned about his looks as well. But he was most famous for writing the music for a song which you probably all remember from 1974, the Sister Janet Mead version of the Lord's Prayer. That was Arnold. And this is the album that had the Lord's Prayer on it. Arnold wrote half of the songs on the album as well as the composer. He was a very prolific musician, but of course he didn't get much recognition out of this. And when Festival Records, who made a mozza, millions, it sold millions, Lord's Prayer all over the world. When Arnold was writing his original songs with the bands I was in, Festival Records weren't interested in recording him. So, there's many sides to the music industry. And this band, Speedboat, went for about 5 or 6 years. So by 1986, we had a slightly different lineup with a trombone player and another guitarist. And that guy on the left, his name's Phil Coulson, and that's Sia's father. So these are the connections that I've made. Then I'm just going to drop more names now. Because in '84, some of us got asked to work with Geoffrey Rush as a director. He was directing Magpie Theatre Company. They had a show at the Royal Show, and they wanted a sort of a marching band with brass and drums, and that was me, the little drummer boy on the left. And Craig Tidswell, the sax player from Speedboat, was in that as well. So how am I doing for time? Yeah, I'm good? Thank you. So that was all good fun. And then because I was also in the academic world, I got a job at the Northern Territory University. So we suddenly, whole family, found ourselves living in Darwin, which is, if anyone's spent any time there, it's like another planet. But I got into a band up there as well. And I wasn't playing drums this time, I was the bass player, which I do play a bit of guitar and bass. And this bunch of rogues here actually were called the Rogues. And we played sort of Irish, Celtic, thrashy sort of rock. A lot of fun. And, we got together and we were only together for 3 weeks, and we were asked to do a support act at the Darwin Casino in front of 2,000 people supporting Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, which is, huge. But it's the sort of thing that will happen in Darwin, So that was fun. And Thorpe, he's a little guy. He's got a big voice. Was a little guy, R.I.P. So that was Darwin. That was fun. And then came back to Adelaide because Darwin, you either love it or hate it. I loved it, but my wife hated it because of the climate, the isolation. So we came back to Adelaide, and I discovered rockabilly music, another whole genre. This is a whole subculture of people, who everything about the 1950s they love. The cars, the rock and roll dancing, the women have ponytails, the guys have quiffs. And so the Satellites were a band that played for that sort of crowd. Hugely popular, and we made a CD called Bop Tonight. We recorded it locally, put it out, and sold heaps and heaps and heaps at gigs. And through a distributor in London, we sold heaps in Finland because the Finns love rockabilly. And that was real fun for me because you literally, I only stood up and had a snare drum, and the guy with the double bass, he did all the work, the slap bass. It's very percussive, so that was fun. We played for ages. We had residencies here at the casino. We went to a big rockabilly festival up in the Gold Coast a few times. And that took me to the end of the century. So now, talking about bands that I was in, that I'm still in this century. This is the Casbah Kings. My old mate Ian Mitchell, who was in Hey Daddy-O back in the day on guitar. And this is us playing down at Semaphore in a little tiki bar on New Year's Eve. And there's a chapter in the book about, the last chapter in the book is about that gig, which was quite memorable. So that's one band I'm in at the moment. And another one is called Mary Jane and the Progression, and this is a big sort of swing jazz ensemble with a horn section, and we do swingy, jazzy versions of pop songs, and it's a kind of like a corporate show band, and we do fringe gigs and stuff like that. And this is one of those bands where all those guys read music except me. I've never learnt to read music. Every sort of drumming I've ever done has been picked up by ear. So those guys are all reading the dots, and I have to memorise everything. So it's good. It's good practice for me. And then finally, the band I was in back in 1975, the Lone Rangers, we reconvened. Recently, we got back together, the 5 of us who are still around, plus a 6th ring-in member, and we sort of just picked up a couple of years ago where we left off in 1976, and it's amazing how the music just comes back, the camaraderie comes back, and really it just sort of reminds me, the message I've got really is about playing music with people is a celebration, and it's a celebration within the band, and also it's a great thing to do for people to enjoy and to come and listen and maybe dance to the band. So, as Ian was saying, here's the book. At the launch, I had a launch a few weeks ago, and my friend Greg Champion came over from Melbourne to launch it. We sold it for $25 at the launch, and I said to Zing, well, I'll offer it to you lovely people for that price. He said no. sell it at the retail price of $29.99, but then offer $5 back to the club. So I'm happy to do that. So after this is all finished, I'll be out there with books and a card reader if anyone is interested. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. Don't run away. Have we got any questions for Tom?
Yes. Questions? Hello. Good.
How you doing? Thanks for that. That was excellent. Did you ever cross paths with Zoot and Rick Springfield?
Oh, there is a Zoot story in the book. Okay. How do I go back on this machine here? Where's it? E. Oh, no. E? Ah, okay. Well, let me just show you this picture here. So the person on the left there, Stephen Stone, who's a guitarist in this band, he was the original guitarist in the Zoot. So I've been playing with him for 35 years. And so there is a connection with the Zoot. Yep. Good question. Yep, thank you. Sorry, Rick's? No, not Rick Springfield, because we went to see the Zoot. I remember seeing them at Apollo Stadium. But didn't meet him. No. Oh yes, Heidi.
There's I love going to live music as well, and there's lots of places in Adelaide. We're very lucky here in Adelaide that there is the live music scene, is quite active. Although COVID really put a bit of a hit. You don't need to explain that, but where people couldn't dance, and now that dancing is back in, it's really great because as I get older, I see a lot more older people actually going out every week, going to live bands and dancing, and for me this is a revelation because as I never thought older people did this. And it's only... and, people in their 70s and 80s every week are going. So it's really great to see bands of your calibre and age group out there because I think older people feel more comfortable also going to see bands like with their same age group and being able to dance and just be
and
physically active.
Thank you. And I mean, it's just like yoga or Pilates. I mean, dancing is good exercise. And with these bands now, I'm very careful that we're not too loud because I actually, have ear damage from playing all this rock and roll over the years. So, if you can go out to a show and see a band and it doesn't have to be deafeningly loud either. So we cater for all ages. Thank you.
Thank you. Having played for 30 years myself, I remember the progression of being in a band where we had to lug in all the gear and lug out all the gear. And at one stage, we got to a stage where we could hire roadies. And that just changed the world for us. You would have probably had the same experience. What was it like when you first had roadies to set up and pack up your gear?
Oh, okay. There's a story about roadies in the book, but it's not for public sharing, really. But roadies are a breed unto themselves. They're usually guys in black T-shirts who... would like to be in a band but have no musicality, and so all they can do is sort of hump speaker boxes. But that's to denigrate them because there are guys who do the sound mixing and they need to know what they're doing. But roadies. When I was in Redgum, where are we? The bass player Dave Flett was in Captain Matchbox. If you remember that band, and Captain Matchbox Whoopee Band, they were sort of a jug band from Melbourne. They famously had about 75 members scrolling through the band over the years, but they had about 175 roadies scrolling through the band because they just don't last. It's just like you get burnt out. The whole lugging in, lugging out thing is there's actually at the end of the book I've got an epilogue and it's called Bumping Out because that's what you do. Once the gig's finished, you've got to take all this gear out again. But roadies are all part of the scene, and it was fascinating when I came here to see U2 playing at the Adelaide Oval a few years ago. Was anyone at that concert? That was great. Yeah, okay. So you saw the huge rig that U2 had. As soon as the band finished, you could see that the roadies calling up the rig, starting to collapse it down because they had to move the whole thing to the next gig. It's a thankless task, but it's part of the scene. And what was your instrument?
Saxophone.
Saxophone, right. And I have to say, Heidi, your partner plays in Gumbo Ya Ya. There's another Adelaide band that I hadn't mentioned, but there's a whole chapter on them. There's another band that I started with those guys in 1989. They're still going. And they've, scrolled hundreds of Adelaide musos through that band as well. This is what happens. Half of Adelaide's played in that band. Hello, yes. Another. Oh, sorry. Yes, hello.
Hi. Rick Allen from Def Leppard famously played with one arm. How hard would that be?
Okay, so there's a song, the drummer from Def Leppard only has one arm. The poor guy had a car accident and had an arm amputated, and he had to learn how to play drums with 2 feet and one arm. And I would find that very difficult, but he did it. Be very frustrating. And I guess I didn't even say, but I talk about it in the book with drumming is a whole body instrument. You have to have syncopation between 2 arms and 2 feet. And when you crack it, it's pretty amazing. You can do 4 things at once, like an octopus. So he had to reconfigure his drum kit so he had more pedals to be able to play with only one hand. But yeah, it would have been horrible. Def Leppard. Sorry,
Tom.
there was one here.
Tom,
here we go.
Loved your talk.
Thank you.
We've heard the sound of your voice. Can we have some music? Do you have a slice of a track?
Oh,
the accent on drums.
Oh, okay. No, I don't. I'm unprepared. But you come to one of my gigs where my bands are playing around town. You'll have to come and see me.
We can imagine the sound.
Yes.
I thought we'd hear it.
Okay, thank you. Next time. Thank you. There's a question here.
Great presentation. I remember Redgum really well, so yeah, it was really nice to listen to you. And I'm looking forward to purchasing your book because my son sings and he likes to play music as well, so I'm going to purchase it for him, so thank you.
No worries.
Can I just also draw the attention to members, our own member, John Hendrickson, is actually playing in a brass band this Friday night and Saturday morning, and it's the Mitcham Band Festival 2022, and there's some details online, so if you want to go and do that. It's 120 years. Mitcham City Brass celebrates 120 years of continuous banding. So John Hendrickson does the cymbals or something in there. So if you want to watch him, he'll be there.
Wow, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, I think I'll be just out here with books and a card reader if you're interested. Thank you.
Don't run away, Tom. I'd like to thank Tom Stehlik formally for a fantastic presentation. He did confess to me he was a little nervous. He said, look, these Rotarians, I haven't really met them before. You know what they are like? And I said, look, they don't have two heads, so I'm really glad. Tom, this is just a little, being a Rotary Club, we don't really give too much away. It's a certificate of appreciation. And all monies raised today will be is very much due to you, and thank you very much for that. And a little something, which is very little something.
It's going straight to Paul. Going straight to Paul Lorraine. It's going straight to my grandson.
Thank you.